Hey everybody, it is Wintermute coming to you from the think tank. I want to kind of go into a house rule that me and one of my friends had kind of discussed at one point regarding sub pens. Um, we the discussion stemmed around the way the turns worked out and how they were kind of sometimes awkward when it came to placing units, particularly naval units, because the let's say the British want to drop a bunch of ships in the channel. Now they can build 10, obviously. They've got two major shipyards. Let's scoot this up a little. But at the same time, they may not have the money to do that. So do they hold back the money and then drop 10 ships all at once? Well, sometimes that may not be practical. So you want to kind of, you want to build a destroyer this turn. You want to start a carrier. You want to maybe drop a sub. The problem with that is sometimes if you piecemeal your fleet like that, that gives the Germans the chance. Well, I mean, and I'm just going to use Britain and Germany as an example here, but really this could apply to any navy. Um, they can kind of pick it apart turn after turn after turn if they can reach it. So what a lot of players do is they either build it way up north or they build it over off Canada and they start to build it up. Then once it's big enough, they move it back over to the English Channel. And in some regards, that's not a terrible. I mean, it's not the end of the world. In a lot of cases, sometimes that is pain in the butt when you want to be able to kind of drop a carrier, nearer to London or nearer to England itself. But the Luftwaffe is just going to come out with whatever navy that Germany has left to kind of sink it. So you end up building it far away. Now, like I said, that's not the end of the world. That's not a game. That's not even the problem. We were just sort of talking about that concept. The issue came when we started talking about kind of subs. And we both kind of agreed that it was, for Germany to build subs after the war starts, it becomes problematic because they are, they end up basically more or less usually building them way up there and then sailing the long way around Britain to get back out to the Atlantic. Now, historically, that didn't actually happen. They actually did build subs and launch subs off the coast of France. The problem is once you place a naval unit out. It's in the water. It's not still in port being protected at all. Now, France obviously has plenty of space to build naval units out here. They have a major shipyard here. So in theory, you could drop 5 subs here in one turn. Now, the problem is what happens is you're going to get every British carrier nearby to launch its fighters. You're going to get every medium bomber that can reach from British Midlands down there. You're going to set up, aircraft carriers here to get them as they're coming out, which again, none of this is game breaking, but it is to the point where it's like, it's a little odd sometimes that we agreed that it felt odd that the Germany was difficult for them to kind of do what was historically accurate, not completely safely and without consequence. And we'll go into what the consequence will be regarding the house rule. But it's we're kind of like, well, yeah, that and then the sub war kind of dies off after that. So we kind of talked about it, and we kind of talked about sub pens and how they were historically used. And obviously, if you don't know, a sub pen is just basically it's a just massive concrete structure to just house subs, and they could take direct hits from bombs, and just the subs inside would be just fine. So I talked about it and I go, okay, well, John, let's try this. Let's think about it this way. Now, a sub base is basically, I think, a sub pen. It basically could function the same way. So I presented this idea. I'm like, okay, well, John, how about this? Now, per the rules, you can place 2 submarines at a sub base during the build phase. So why don't we just say, on the turn that a sub is placed at a sub base, until the start of its next turn, it is protected by flak guns. Meaning the enemy can still come in and attack it with its aircraft and escorting destroyers and whatnot. But they're also, in addition, the defender with the subs still at the sub base are going to get flak shots at any aircraft. And he went, yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense. And I kind of went, yeah, okay, and that doesn't change any core rules. That's not going to make anything too dramatic. All it's going to do is protect subs for one turn after they hit the water if you have a sub base. So it would have to be a sub base and not just a shipyard. We kind of agreed that sub bases were sub pens, basically just by a different name. Um, and then we took it a step further. It's like, well, what if we said that about all ships? As a way, and then we talked about, well, in port and out of port, because obviously a lot of these ships just didn't sit there in a sea zone hanging out doing circles. They were either going from, usually on a very specific patrol, or going from point A to point B, and as soon as they got to point B, they went back into port. You generally wouldn't just have a ship hanging out there doing nothing. And then we started talking about, well, what if we declare ships in port or out of port? How would that affect the game and things like that? And I go, yeah, and I've thought about that, and we've thought about that before. And I do know that they do have in port, out of port tokens for sale on HBG's website. And I believe they go along with 1914 because I think that's a concept in that game. But it's not a concept in 1930s, in World War II. And that's okay. I'm not saying it should or shouldn't. I'm just saying it just doesn't exist yet, if it should at all. So we talked about, well, what about any ship that the first turn it splashes into water, it's assumed to still be basically in port. So if the enemy wants to jump on it, it still gets flak shots at all the aircraft from the port itself, from the shipyard and or subbase. And we agreed that made sense. Now I was still a little bit on the fence about that one, but I definitely think I want to include subbases counting as subpens and effectively giving flak protection the very first turn that a sub is dropped, at the very least. You could probably come up with, and that as the most basic way of not rewriting core rules. I feel that would not be a horrible addition to the game. And historically, there were sub pens along the coast of France, and various other places that would fill that, help protect the subs. You can build subs up and around there, build subs out there, and they would have at least some level of protection. Now, obviously, with the rules as they are, the enemy could still come in on maritime air patrol, put in their destroyers and maybe sink both subs, but then at least he gets two shots. The defending subs at least get their normal defensive shots against the destroyers, and then they would get two flak shots against the aircraft. So even if he sinks the destroyers, it becomes a lot more, or the subs, it becomes a lot more risky to come in with his aircraft. And I like that idea. It's also another reason to build sub-bases if they double as sub-pens. So I think that's the rule I'm going to try to push. I'm going to present to my regular group and kind of go, okay, well, let's try this, see how we like it. It may or may not have a huge impact on the game. And then we can talk about other variations, expanding on that, whether we want to expand it to other ships, whether we want to come up with rules for being in port or out of port, and things of that nature. So yeah, just an idea I wanted to put out there. One other thing I wanted to say is I don't know if you're familiar with the ticky tack. I don't know. I think it's called different things in different areas, but basically it's just this sticky, pasty thing that the elementary school teachers used to stick posters to the wall with when it was like brick walls and stuff. And I've started using that in small dabs on the bottom of my chips. For the ones that I want to put out on the board that I don't want to keep, knocking all over the place. They stay a lot better. That's especially important in places like Australia and South Africa, where I just lean over the board to grab something, and then all of a sudden my belt and my waist keeps knocking the chits all over the place, and it gets really frustrating. So, and I did leave this ticky tack attached to the board for almost 2 months before I even remembered I'd put it there in one of the corners, because I wanted to see if it would have any effect on the actual vinyl. And when I pulled it up, nothing. It was perfectly fine. So that's just an idea to keep some of these chips in place and tokens and markers in place when you don't want to have to keep bumping them around. You want to just stick it there and forget about it. Because we've all had games where it's like, oh, we put this chip out there because we upgraded that, and then an hour later, it's over there, and you're like, wait, hold on. Wait, was that here or here? Or what did I do with that? And there's so much going on. Sometimes it's easy to forget that. Um, so just an idea for keeping the board a little cleaner. So this is Wintermute signing off.